of the Masked Ranger himself. He may not be alone, but his DJ Lynn, he sits on the other side of the table, making things rock and roll for us as we invite you to be a part of a continued discussion. 1-800-534-TALK. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. And thank you so much for joining us as we invite you to be a part of the discussion. Chances are you spent the weekend thinking, man, is Monday another holiday? Should it not be? Well, a few things I want to ask of you that I've asked of me to consider, given where we are in this place. Now, it's not a case, as a good friend says to me, don't be back in water for others. But it's not so much that's the intent. It's about asking of ourselves, where are we? What are we doing? And how do we do it together? Well, you ever seen a production on stage where what they say is a soliloquy? Well, I don't want it to be such. I want it to be an interactive, engaging, informative dialogue where through this platform we invite others to share perspective. Today, for instance, it's been already for some of us, an 8-hour day. A good friend from very early, he reached out saying, okay, can we meet earlier than normal? And I thought, man, it's a cold morning. It's the kind of morning you want to maybe stay indoors and enjoy your tea just a little bit longer. But what they say, the show must go on. And for many of us, it doesn't matter, if our work takes us outside because we're in construction or we're still one of the few who still have something to do when it comes to water sports. Even though it may be cold and choppy outside, you still need to get out and take care of the boats. Or it may be that you are, one of those people for whom the garden calls, and doesn't matter how cold it is, you still put on your gloves. Today you might have put on your windbreaker and got a little bit warm as you went out and tended to your orchids, your roses, or you might be, contracted to take care of somebody else's. So it takes you out. Now, when you look at that, there are those of us who are from other jurisdictions or who have lived and worked, and today may be cold by Cayman standards. Perhaps not as cold as yesterday or the day before, but it's certainly warm if you hail it from, some other places. So this is still just a nice day out, and even better because you're not dealing with the heat and the humidity. But what has engendered all of us is that we are in a place where, for some, we use words like, oh, we're free. And I want to start with that and ask you to guide me so that it doesn't seem that it's inflammatory, that it is ill-informed, or in any way, sort of ill-conceived. Listen to a presentation earlier. The objective was, be assembled before 8 a.m. For some of us, that was quite easy. For others, it was a challenge because we were leaving one presentation that, given the nature of the week, started a little bit earlier in order to get to another. And the word, free. One of the presenters shared that, can you imagine, in a democracy, at this time in our history, that word has taken on a new connotation. For some, free meant that they're now released from prison, which, as the lady shared, seems to be almost the perspective now. Free meant that you didn't have to pay for something, and so many are saying, "Well, I'm released." Well, were you a prisoner? No, I was doing quarantine. Oh, were you, seriously ill in quarantine, as that word was used? Past? No. This is, the new norm. Wow. And in having that discussion, it creates a great discord and disharmony, has divided many, even unintentionally. So the question is, how do we get to a place where there's a great sense of respect for individual freedoms and choices, a sense where the things we read and hear are not only credible and accurate, but are said with intent to inform and advise, not to punish and not to divide. Much easier said than done. And to think that there are those of us who either directly, through maybe the actions of the political directorate at the time, decided that we must fight for freedoms, draw alongside the freedom fighters who are opposed to the junta, the regimes, words that we've ascribed to indicate some negative connotation because they are impinging on democracy, on freedoms. And yet, here we are, in a democracy, seemingly saying that we are free. Well, are we? Are we free to choose, free to speak, free to share, free to assemble? Maybe. What is your view? 949-837, 1-800-534-8255. And in rounding out that comment, they did say that she was not that long ago in a space, in a place where she listened to those who were, by their own admissions, have been appointed or elected to certain positions, high offices as they were, not just in this country or in this part of the hemisphere, where for some reason the people there have seemingly forgotten that they're there to serve. And because they are able to enjoy the trappings of their office, or their particular position gives them, specific access, we seem to forget where we come, as it were. So do you think that's what's happening now, that we have not only taken for granted what has been an incredible sacrifice by many to give us the joys and the freedoms that we enjoy today? Or is it the norm? People forget where they come from because they want to. They seem to be, as she has put it, intoxicated by their office, blinded by what's before them, because for the time being, they're the king of the mountain, as it were. Well, we hear about the servant leader. The scriptures probably tells us, if I recall it correctly, let the greatest among you be, the first to hold up his hand and offer up a sense of service. Not in servitude, not to be subservient, but to be of value. 949-837, 1-800-534-8255. Or you can WhatsApp 925-3261. Now, as an aside, like there is in always, at least most of the settings that I've enjoyed, a meeting, a presentation, and then, as it's concluded, there may be a bit of an exchange. We may call it Q&A, as it were. And then, you reconvene another time. But in that time between, when the meeting ends and you leave to go where it is that you have to go next, there is the parking lot discussion. And a fellow said, are we now in this space where it's like, it is his without reservation. He's one of those individuals that, by his own admission, enjoys the sci-fi novels and the sci-fi movies and the invasion, of the earth by, much more advanced technology, and these beings are coming in and, taking over the world, and there you are, finally, as a global force of all the nations, irrespective of their economic or political persuasion. They finally have to unite in order to survive as the human race. He says, is that what it's going to take for us to get to a space as a world to realize that we have to do better in respect to the impact we're having on the environment? Seemingly, there's an acceptance that we're making the earth a lot hotter, which could make it untenable for us and certainly for future generations. The impact on climate change, on rising sea levels, the impact on food, the consequence of how we're living, and the growing divide between those that have and those that have little or nothing. And he shared, why is it that we have to wait to a space of almost collapse before we understand the consequence of our actions. Now he shared that in using his interest, his passion for sci-fi. Even he said that, early on when he would read some of the things and never did quite, understand it then. And as an adult, with the, as he puts it, the good fortune of having the opportunity to get a formal education from seemingly what is expected and perceived to be respectable institutions, and then years have been kind. He maintains good health, could have traveled, interact with people, gain and garner a sense of experience, and sometimes by default an expertise in certain areas. Now he realizes the importance of one thing. If we work against each other, we have less. If we learn to work together, we have more. Not just more, but more enjoyment. Well, as we pause and take a break, it may be too much for a cold day like today. It may be just the thing that you ordered, but if you were able to, as I would love now, sit with a nice bowl of fish tea and have a little conversation. Well, let's pretend that we're somewhere, in the backyard under a nice mango tree in blossom, and you share with me your thoughts. It could be about anything. It could be about the notion that our government, is talking publicly about spending tens of millions of dollars relative to putting sand on the beach in order to restore it. You might think, we need to spend more than that if that's what it takes. You might say, well, that's money well wasted, man. You may as well just take it and on a cold day like today, build a fire and, put a fish tea on, so at least you get something to show for it. Not to disrespect anybody's perspective, it's just about to ask you, what do you think? Because at the end of the day, is it them and us, or is it us together? Well, I want to hear from you, so let's talk about the 21 million, or the 121 million, or the 400 million, or the 50 billion, or whatever the sum is. It may only be the 50 cent. 8949-8037, 1-800-534-8255. Please stay tuned for Talk Today.
Families are like branches on a tree. We grow in different directions, yet our roots remain deeply intertwined.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. And give us a shout and share your thoughts with us. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255 or WhatsApp 925-3261. Just quickly, during the break, I must share that it's really, interesting to see how more and more of us are looking at things from the perspective. So quickly during the break, someone called in and just message, actually sharing a perspective on the idea that here we are in this time and so much is happening, not just around the world or even in the immediate vicinity of our islands, but just right here and sometimes just right within our district. I wanted to ask of two things. Are we aware of all of either the ongoing development and they seem to propose or discuss new projects, not just the ones that the government hope for will come online and create employment and add more revenue so the governments can do more for its citizens, but the notion that that should be a sign of a healthy economy, a government doing a great job to provide, for its people through employment and, business opportunities and growth and expansion and the like. And the person said, but if you just drove around the country, would you recognize the face of it, even from one month to the next? Well, an interesting perspective. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for calling.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Ebanks. How are you doing?
My good friend, good afternoon, man. How are you today?
I'm not doing too bad, thank God. I'm doing much better.
Man, you sound awesome, man. Awesome.
I just called in on the tail end of your topic you just had on talking about, obviously about development and that there's been this sort of unspoken issue that is going around about who we're developing for and what are we developing for. Obviously, the average person would have the right to ask that question and will be super suspicious as to why they come to that conclusion, only because even though we've seen the pandemic, 2020 was probably our slowest year in history in terms of getting anything done because of the pandemic. And then after we started to get things happening back that summer and, construction and stuff continued. And in hindsight, development, construction, and those industries kind of kept the economy going a little bit because the tourism sector was completely closed. Financial service industry was still ongoing because a lot of people had the capability to work from home, and a lot of that service that financial services provide is electronically related, right? So it's not like customers coming in the building and you still have people who can operate from their portals at home and still satisfy the customers in which the industry is set up to satisfy. So financial service industry didn't skip a beat too much because of those capabilities and because of the nature of their industry. Now, the thing about affordable homes for young Caymanians, which is a very, very, very important topic, and it's critical because as we see the constant development going on around us as local people, I also saw an article said where real estate hit a $1.something billion in sales.
Yeah.
So that goes to show you that there's a lot of activity going on in that industry, right? So it is very fair for someone to raise the concerns or any issue to say, hey, who are we developing for? Can Caymanians afford it? We see some of the price points and some of the... I don't know if it's my phone breaking up or is it your line, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I do hear a little crackling, but we are hearing you okay. And
okay.
I was concerned too that it might be the same on the outside. But yeah.
Okay, I heard the static, so I didn't want to.
Likewise.
Yeah. So when we see these things and we see the areas in which certain price points has reached, we ask the question. That's why we ask the question because we go on the Linford Pearson bypass, for instance. We see some activity going on there, and we see one bedroom selling for $300,000-$400,000. So as a Caymanian who grew up in this industry and this market and this country, we've seen homes in those particular areas go for a lot less, and now they've doubled, in some cases tripled. We have to ask who we're developing for because the average person that live in these predominant areas can't afford that. So my thing is this, is that there's several things that we have to approach prior to government putting in certain caveats for Caymanians. Like, for instance, we know that they waived their stamp duty, and they're doing a lot of other different things to try to get young Caymanians in the position to own homes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a great thing to do, Sterling, but my concern is this. If we fail to not recognize the sustainability of maintaining a mortgage, mm-hmm. then we only setting our young Caymanians up for failure.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more important that we create institutions and we create policy and legislation, like, for instance, cost of living. We talk about cost of living. Nobody has really taken a serious stab at cost of living in the last 20 years. And when you look at jobs and labor and companies and ownership and distribution of wealth from government compulsory contracts, we're not putting our young Caymanians in a financial situation by way of creating industries in order for them to be able to maintain these mortgages. Yeah, they might be able to get the stamp duty waived. They might be able to get the small deposit if any were required. And you might be able to do these things, but then after 5 years, cost of living continue to go high. God forbid anything happen medical-wise, that they got to spend whatever savings they had for a medical reason, and then they find themselves in a position where they can't maintain the mortgage,
mm-hmm.
and they end up getting foreclosed on. So my greatest concern is not only to put young Caymanians in homes, but make sure that when we put them there, that they can sustain it and keep it until it's paid off for and it's actually theirs.
Mm-hmm.
So as where I would give credit to any government, including this one, for putting initiatives into making it easier for young Caymanians to attain a home, we need to also look at the surrounding mechanisms that allow them to maintain keeping their homes. So I think that if they put together a good group of people who have the capabilities and expertise in these areas, I think we can find a solid plan moving forward on how to make certain changes. Cost of living is instrumental for everybody, not just young Caymanians who want a home.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to make sure that when we look at the price point, right? We all know that 5 years ago, a sheet of plywood was $21.50.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's $99. So when a person go buy a brand new place in Cayman and you say, oh, well, why are you selling this for $650,000? The person can say, oh, well, the cost of construction material has quadrupled in the last year and a half
mm-hmm.
due to these reasons, and this is what we had to build it at, so therefore now we have to charge more. Now, I'm not saying that that's the only reason why they're expensive. I'm just simply saying is that why haven't we taken a strong look and tried to get some sort of handle on what's going on with the consumption of our country, that then in turn become a commodity for our young people and our Caymanians and our average person to consume, which is unreachable. That's
right.
why we need to look within our region to start getting more resources from within our region at a better price point, so therefore it's passed on to our consumers.
Right.
That's just my opinion.
I appreciate it, man. And I'll just ask this question as we go into the next call, and maybe we can mull it over. And just question just generally, given the presentation I had this morning and also what many of our listeners have shared privately as well as publicly, what are we doing as a country to think long term from two perspectives? Not just food security, which is important, but are we willing to say, take building materials, for instance. One lady shared a perspective that a gentleman has shared, totally unconnected. There was a time in our history of being in a position to export hardwoods now, maybe centuries ago, all right? They were exploited and some would say decimated. But are we willing to maybe plant some of those same hardwoods so that down the road, 100 years from now, future generations will be able to have a forest that they can harvest, all right? Are we willing to do what you're saying and leverage the resources of the region so that we have a greater sense of interaction and cooperation, right?
Certainly. And what I would say to that, so you can get to your next caller.
Yeah.
Here's what I would say, Sterling, is that at one time in our history, we had a very good relationship with Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
Jamaica, which has endless amount of open land and land space, in which if we had a good relationship, we can do a lot of farming.
Mm-hmm.
We can do a lot of things that we can harvest from there to get here. That's future planning. Cayman, unfortunately, is limited to the grounds and the land areas in order to. But I still encourage planting trees for for future harvest. But what I'm saying is that the immediate thing to do is to go and reconnect the bridges that we had with our region to get a lot of the resources that are high price here in our country and establish a better relationship with them. Listen, we could lease land in Jamaica and open up a farm and have that stuff shipped directly here. So and you got so many people in Jamaica who are unemployed and could come into these farms and work the grounds, and there is so many things we can do that we just have to be out of the box thinkers. But anyway, I'll leave it there. And I'll listen in because I want other people to call.
Yeah, man. But thank you, man. Thank you. And hopefully chat with you as often as you are able to. All right? Enjoy your afternoon. All right. Let's take the other call. Hey, welcome. Good afternoon. Thanks for calling.
Dwayne, I'm getting a little deaf, but I think I recognize that voice because of the sense behind the caller. So that has to be Mario Evang.
No. You're right with the first name. But that was,
I mean Mario Rankin.
Mario D. Rankin. Yes, sir.
Mario Rankin, I bet.
Yeah. One is tall and handsome, one is short and handsome.
I swear that if there was one more intelligent person like him in the Cayman Islands, that everything would change. Now, it's crazy because this year is 45 years since I came back to this island. And it's saying basically the same thing over and over again. And apparently my position or my problem is that my positions are extreme. I'm an extremist. And, I know that intelligence is extreme because most people don't have the capacity to get there. And the reason is something that is necessary if we're going to talk about balance and we're going to talk about democracy that encourages debate, and that debate should not just be about giving everybody a position to say something, but giving intelligent people the mic. And that's not discrimination. Because when democracy becomes a system where everybody has a say, the whole static of the situation means that there's no sense made of anything, and everything at the end is nonsense. I'm sorry, but we see democracy working very well in America at the moment. And Plato had a lot to say about democracy, and anybody who has read Plato would understand that the Greeks experimented with democracy, and it becomes what I call democracy. Because at the end of the day, what most politicians do is they mock the people. They keep them uneducated. And then afterwards, they say, you have a voice, you have a choice. But the choice can only be a choice that is against their own interest. And this is the tragic nature of the situation here in this country at the moment. And the caller was so correct in talking about the housing. The housing is a project that I started here as the National Housing and Community Development Trust. The PPN came in and took off the label trust, Community Development Trust, because they do not understand the importance of community. Because housing is for families for communities, and communities for nations. There's a synergy between all these things. And if I always talk about the heads of people, it's because of my education. But if I'm an educated person, then I should have some kind of say in this country, either as an elected person or as a paid person advising elected people. But the point is, in this country is that people are so petty that they are very jealous of the very thing that could sustain them. They destroy the very thing, the very root of the thing that is put in place to help them because they didn't put them in place. The Minister of Housing at the moment, I have a lot of respect for him because I went on his political platform before he was elected, the election before that, and encouraged the people of Northside to vote for Mr. J. E. Banks. But when I was called to a meeting once, after he got elected, to speak with regards to the project in the Windsor Park area,
Mm-hmm.
I told them very specifically what were the objectives of my ministry and why we had called it National Housing and Community Development Trust, because there was a responsibility which the government had. It was not a private scheme, and therefore the responsibility of the government was to build strong families that would enable people to have the stability to be able to support the payments back to the housing trust, not to the banks, not to involve the banks in it, not to build homes, to create jobs for contractors and their friends, and then leave the people alone to be able to service these mortgages when they know that inflation will always eat away at low wages, and they do not pay attention to the earnings of the people. The people forsake their children in order just to survive, and almost paying mortgages is impossible in many cases. So for them to come, this government to come, or any government to come and say we are solving a problem by building 100 homes a year, it's nonsense. What they're doing is creating commodities, not creating communities, not creating families, not strengthening the ability of children to go into school and learn. They're not building the social systems that are necessary to work in collaboration with the other systems to maintain the stability in the society which we need.
Mm-hmm.
And why is it that it offends the Caymanian people that they have people who can be reasonable in saying that what we need is that we need logic, reason, intelligence at work, and not just rhetoric? The rhetoric of the government is very dangerous, because the proposition is as long as you feed the dog, it will not bite you. But your intention is not to free the dog, but to enslave the dog. And we need to begin to have respect for our people in this country. We need to give them, Dwayne, the
Yes, sir.
possibilities to make mature, intelligent choices when it comes to purchasing or when it comes to voting for people. It does not serve any country to educate people who can be led in a direction that will ultimately lead to the type of infighting and instability that we see in the United States at this moment. That is a situation that has gone so far, it cannot be corrected.
Right.
The way we're building this country in terms of the importation of wealth and the importation of poverty at the same time is setting a time bomb. These are things that I have had the possibility to observe over 45 years in this country, coming back with experiences from other countries. And I can tell them all, be aware what it means by time longer than rope.
So
I don't have to be here.
Exactly.
But definitely,
yeah.
we're not building a stable society.
Yeah. Dr. Frank, if I can ask of you, I mean, both, well, not just both, you're a sociologist, you're a former parliamentarian, and certainly some will look at you as not just the academic researcher and an author and the like, but the notion that you're a social commentator. Can I ask a couple of things of you to delve in from the heart of a sociologist as well as a parliamentarian? In our community now, we ask the question for many elections. Let's look at it from election cycles. 3, 4, 5, 10 election cycles. For whom are we developing? Is that a question that has just become, sort of spoken into a void? Or is it a real question that has evaded real discussion?
Well, I think that I don't think it's a sensible question. Whether or not Roy Borden had anything to do with that or not, it's a rhetorical question.
Okay.
Because we know who we're developing for. So tell people we're not developing for Caymanians, we're underdeveloping Caymanians in the development process. So we know who we're developing for. We're developing for the developmenters, the developers. And the developers are those people who own the land, who own the resources, who control the judiciary, who control the political system, who control every system in this country, not the people. The vote does not control the Cayman Islands. Money controls the Cayman Islands, every aspect of it, like any place else.
Okay.
So people should stop fooling themselves with rhetorical questions. We have known the answer. Roy Borden wrote a paper before, well, after he came back from Canada, must be back already before I came back in 77, which he answered the question long time ago. He was just putting that question back out there, but he knows the answer. The answer is we are developing for people to come in and take our birthright. The way in which we have developed a new oligarchy in this country of the very, very wealthy, the billionaire clubs in this country, that means that Caymanians could wrestle for the rest of eternity, and they will not change the direction of this country by voting or by doing anything else. And the fact is that the British government is responsible. The British government will be held accountable one day for all that has happened in the Cayman Islands.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, the minister that is here at the moment, and all of those people that come here as almost like tourists, really as real serious people who are meeting people who know what's been going wrong in this country for a long time. That's not going to solve the problem. And it only shows that they are conspiring with what's happening. They're in agreeing with what's happening. They're not hearing the voices of the people that they should hear, that know what's happening. We are no longer the owners of the Cayman Islands. Those native people who have ancestors that, like myself, that go all the way back to slavery. We have no say. And if that is being extreme by saying that, then truth must hang me, because I will always say it. I will always say that when I came back here 45 years ago, Thomas Russell was here. Thomas Russell knew what was going on. He said what is going on, and he said to me, Dr. Frank, I don't know why you complain about development for. He said, you all don't have nothing. He said, let them nationalize, let them develop it, and then turn around and nationalize it. Well, I'm not going to be the one who do it. But I could tell you one thing. The way the inequalities are developing in this country, it's not going to be anything left for Caymanians but to nationalize. So giving pittance to people by saying you're giving them 100 houses a year,
Mm-hmm.
and as Mario is saying, while the consumer prices are going up to an extent,
Mm-hmm.
and the cost of and the wages which people are being paid are so low, that's not going to solve the problem.
Right. You raise excellent points, and respectful, Dr. Frank. We're just about to take the news break, but I certainly appreciate what you were sharing. Maybe others will pick up on it. Hey, thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Have a wonderful afternoon. Let's pause and take a break. When we come back, let's ask that word. Nationalize is the word that we would use, and some would say, but wait a minute, when other jurisdictions did it, we call it expropriation. Is there a difference? And at the end of the day, is it fundamental? Stay tuned for Talk Today. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And thank you, too, for allowing us the opportunity to share a perspective with you. We're very grateful for the many individuals who are willing to weigh in and give us their thoughts. The phone lines are open, and it doesn't matter who's at the other end of the table. I always appreciate that it is through them and with their, excellent, contribution. It's why the sound quality is what it is, why your access is unfeathered, and why we can have this discussion. I just sit on the end of the mic to listen. Hopefully through your constant engagement, or we can participate in a meaningful discourse. 949-8037, 949-6990. If you want to avail yourselves of the Flow toll-free line, well, do that as well. 1-800-534-8255. Then you can WhatsApp 925-3261. All these numbers are the same that you'll use for the record as you will for Talk Today, and engage you in our discussions. Now, you might want to reference some of the things that Mr. Art had on this morning, and go right ahead. We want to hear from you. But to the last two callers and the perspective of what was shared, I want to hopefully very respectfully to you and to those who have shared, and certainly if anyone says something in confidence, I will do my utmost not to betray it, not just deliberately, but inadvertently. But the discussions that we're having now are spurred by many of the things that we see, people sharing publicly, some electronically, some in just a presentation, some as they talk and sit and socialize, given the parameters that we find ourselves. But the last two callers in talking about things like home ownership, a couple of questions to ask though. Should there be a reasonable expectation for young Caymanians and even those who come here from afar to actually physically own a piece of the land? Should there be restrictions on who can own and for how long? Should it be leasehold versus freehold? Now, that's a discussion that is quite easy for many to have, given their perspective or their experience from the jurisdictions in which they used to live and work, or from their own education. And for others, well, they would say, well, isn't it not the Caymanian dream that I grew up in one day own my own place, whether that is a freestanding structure on a large expanse of land, or just a small little postage-sized stamp parcel, or whether it is communal property in terms of, the strata legislation that we have, you own in common with everybody else. A changing dynamic, and unfortunately may not be one that we have fully grappled, partly because we are unaware, despite the presence and existence of the legislation or the excellent land registry system that we have, but maybe much easier managed, manipulated, and sort of accessed by those from afar because they're more familiar with it, or maybe they have the financial resources to leverage the legal expertise and the other technical expertise through the surveyors and like to navigate what for some may see to be muddled and complicated waters, and for others it's an easy process. You just got to pay for it. But that aside, are we looking at when we're building housing that is affordable? Take for instance, there have been many jurisdictions that have wrestled with that issue because of limited land space, because of rising costs and all the other things. They may say to a developer, listen, you can build more units than would normally be allowed if, in so doing, you reserve a few for others who can't afford the price point. Not that they become substandard housing, but they're concessions. For example, some of us may have seen in the U.S. Programs from decades past, titled like The Teacher Next Door, that are similar programs that allow the teacher, the police officer, and the nurse to be able to buy into a space that otherwise they would not, putting them closer to their work. Well, let's go to the phones. Welcome, good afternoon. How are you today?
Good afternoon, Wayne. Billy here. Billy Simamba.
Hey, good afternoon, man. We should have a chair for you.
Have a chair for me so I can sit, I'm now a senior citizen. I need to sit down more than stand up,
Yeah. Well, sometimes, as an orator, we tend to want to stand, unless, of course, we were Canada doing his administration or FDR even early on. But anyway, that's a different point. But no, man, be seated.
It is a different point, but I think it is very relevant in the sense that one of the things we are being encouraged to keep our immunity up with this COVID is exercise.
Which is true, eh? And sadly, we seem to have been at one point challenged to get access to those same places that would allow us to keep our exercise and our health.
Can you imagine the irony of that?
Well, I have a comment to make, but let me hold off on that one.
Yeah, life is not perfect, I suppose. We just leave it there for now. I was just listening to the last two callers, and I mean, they made so many valid points, and also made reference to Roy Borden and what he wrote before about land. You see, I agree with so many of the things, just about everything that they said about this land issue and how that has to do as well with the broader society and the freedom and the ability of local people to be able to see that the development which takes place should really be taking place for themselves. You see, it's very interesting. You know, when I came to Cayman in 2003, I came from the British Virgin Islands. I was there for 4 years. Okay. I came to Cayman, and I was shocked actually to find that in Cayman, anybody could just practically jump off the plane and buy a piece of land.
If they can afford it.
I mean, if they can afford it, yeah. I came from the BVI, which of course is another overseas territory, and there you can't buy land unless you are a belonger, you know, the equivalent of Caymanian status. And from last time I checked, it is still the same way. You can't buy land unless you are a belonger. If you've got permanent residence, you can't buy land. You have to be a belonger to be able to buy land. And they have, from my knowledge, that policy has never been challenged to say that, well, let us get rid of this policy so that we can encourage development. That argument is not there in the Cayman Islands, in the BVI.
Right.
And I think that that is something one could look at just as a way of provoking one's thought, because in relation to Cayman, it is said, well, you need this open market so that there can be development, people can easily buy a business and land and provide for employment and so on, which is nonsense anyway, because most companies which open business in Cayman don't employ Caymanians anyway. Okay, it is just used as some kind of argument to say, well, allow people to come in so that the economy can benefit. But when you look at it now, I think that the land issue has to be looked at again. You know, one thing that is interesting, a lot of people, I imagine, don't realize that even in England, when you buy land, you are a tenant of the crown. That is why when I studied land law many years ago, before the beginning of time, you know, this was like in the 70s, I studied English law, right? And the way you studied the law was you were told, oh, X is a tenant for life, and X is a tenant in the ABC. And when I came to Cayman, I found that when they studied land law, they actually didn't use tenant, and the reason was because, of course, when you buy land in Cayman, you own it absolutely, and that's very dangerous because you see, you can't have freedom in any country without land. Way back in Ethiopia, there was a person, I was going to call him a gentleman, but that might be controversial. One called, he was, there was a gentleman there called Mr. Haile Selassie, okay? Haile Selassie presided over what was said to be the oldest feudal system. You are talking about coming into about the 70s there. There was still a feudal system, in Ethiopia. And there was a coup d'etat there by another person who I suppose, for lack of a better term, I would call him a gentleman, Mengistu Haile Mariam. He came in and he said this has to stop. And he got a lot of support because he ended the feudal system. And that's how he was able to get the support. And I can give examples also, for example, in South Africa today, where about 90% of the land in South Africa is owned by about 10% of the population, most of that 10% being the white people. Okay? And it is such a big issue that one small party there called the Economic Freedom Fighters have said we are going to take back this land without compensation, and they have picked up a lot of support. Now, I doubt that they can ever get it without compensation. But the reason I'm mentioning these examples is this. Land is such an important issue that once you lose the land, it becomes very difficult for it to be gotten back.
Right.
In Cayman, I think there's need to give consideration to a system where you are given land and it is a lease for 100 years, okay, or for 99 years, and it is a lease. You can develop the land and you have rights to all the developments that are on the land, but you don't own the land. The land
for the duration of lease.
Yeah. Exactly, you
Okay.
know. And that's what you need. And you see, the problem at the moment, you find that by the time this issue is dealt with, since apparently it is not being dealt with, to tell you the very truth, successive governments have not really dealt with it. I'm not even quite sure that it is in the front burner right now. By the time it is dealt with, it will be too late, and then you'll be talking about possibility of nationalizing and whether you can afford to actually get it back and so forth. It becomes very, very complicated.
Right.
In South Africa right now, it's very complicated because they are saying, okay, the only way they can get it back is by compulsory purchase. But then compulsory purchase is, are you going to pay the market price? Or are you going to pay what is called a fair compensation but not full market price?
Right.
It's complicated. Basically, and to sum up, Dwayne, all I'm saying is, Cayman, deal with this issue and deal with it now. It's already very late. Deal with it specifically, and then you can preserve the future.
Yeah. Let you use one word. Let me ask, in repeating that word, add 3 words to that, right? But before I do, let me ask. It would seem that, as you put it, successive governments have either A, sold and converted from leasehold to freehold properties that were crown land, as it were, or outright sold properties, going back 2, 3, 4 decades. And we saw a report from one of the larger accounting firms of, a suggestion that government should sell off all of its physical assets in order to put cash in the coffers. Now, let me ask of you 3 words: nationalization, expropriation, and eminent domain. Are they all not one and the same in essence?
Well, that's not an area in which, this whole American thing of eminent domain and so on. It's not one area I'm very, very conversant with. Although I do have a basic understanding of it.
Right.
But you see, at the end of it, let me answer it by giving an example of what another country did. This is the country of Zambia, where I came from. When the problem of land became a little bit of an issue, way back in 1974-75, they passed an act called the Land Conversion of Titles Act. So what they did is they took all the land that was all the land that was freehold. It was automatically changed by statute to leasehold. So there was a leasehold, freehold land, which existed, since time immemorial, at least since the British came. And then they created another category of leasehold land, which was statutory leasehold, meaning it was previously freehold, but it was made leasehold with a reversionary interest to the government.
Okay.
So now, if you wanted land, the government gives you a lease for 99 years, and you can develop. And whatever you put on the land, that value is yours. But the land, you do not own that value. And you see, you don't want to get yourself in a position in Cayman where you have to do some legislation of that kind, because I think it will be very difficult to do, particularly in relation to Cayman. I mean, in Bermuda, as you know, they created a system where certain areas only Bermudans could buy land, because that was their way of controlling it. Now, I think that's a good thing, but at the end of the day, is that what you want? Or do you want a land tenure system which protects people who are locals to be able to buy land? I don't know. I just think, to me, this should go at the top of the agenda.
Right. And
there should be statistics which are kept to say how much land is owned by people who are indigenous, how much land is owned by people who are status holders, how much land is owned by people who don't live here, and have those statistics. I think they will be shocking.
Right, but it's interesting, and I certainly, don't want to prolong it and take too much of your time, but remember not long ago in the UK, when the Conservatives were in power and they were, taking and privatizing, a lot of the industries. And the joke was the Labour was saying, don't worry about it, there's just more for us to nationalise when we get back in power. We see that behaviour there. Castro comes to power and he takes, private lands into public ownership, and the word that is used, expropriation, right, in a negative, derogatory kind of way. But the essence is still the same thing. State now owns that sector, that particular property, that particular thing. Are we considering where we've moved as a society?
I think really as a society at the moment, to me, the red light has already gone on. Boom.
Well,
the red light has gone on.
We're speeding through it for nonetheless, huh? But thank you.
Yes.
All right. Thanks.
Well, thanks very much. I will talk again soon. Thank you.
Yes, man, at your convenience. And with that, let's pause, take this break. When we come back, let's invite the phones to light up and hear from you. Stay tuned for Talk Today. If my Spanish was better, I would say buenas tardes, and then I would say, bienvenido, and, let's go to the phone for, your discussion. But I won't do that. I'll leave that to my friends who are, polyglots and the like. But we appreciate your call as we welcome this caller. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Ebanks. It's Quincy Brown. How are you?
Hey, good afternoon, man. The ambassador from the BRAC, huh? How are you?
I'm alive. I'm very grateful, and I'm in good health.
Amen, amen.
I say thank God. How are you doing? Happy New Year.
Thank you, man. Happy New Year to you. I am doing great. I am honestly very thankful. Pensive, hopefully productive, and hopefully, poised to do great things, for each other. So I am blessed, my friend.
Absolutely. Let me echo your sentiments. I want to be in that same frame of mind as well. So now, the last time I would have called Radio Cayman would have been in October. I was actually in Jamaica at that time, and I called Radio Cayman to speak with Orit Connor, who, as you know, is the host of For the Record. And I actually called on Jamaica's National Heroes Day. It wasn't Cayman's National Heroes Day. It was Jamaica's National Heroes Day back in October. And I called for a specific reason and got my message out, of which I was paid for. Very grateful for that. Of course, we celebrate National Heroes Day the last Monday of January. But the reason I've called this afternoon, Mr. Ebanks, I want to highlight or shed light on two very, very important topics, if you grant me the permission to do so ever so briefly. I think it's important when we talk about our golden age homes or nursing homes, rest homes. That's my first topic. And then the second one would be community group homes. So I understand we're living in COVID-19 times, and there are many restrictions in place to protect the population, particularly the most vulnerable, one being our elderly. And what we don't want is any family member or visitor off the street to come to a nursing home and spread this deadly disease known as COVID-19. We're not taking into consideration, though, that staff members who travel and come back in could also bring it in. What I'm saying is, just like how there was a time we were able to go to the Kakernel Community Care Center and we were able to go to the Pines Retirement Home and be tested on the spot prior to going in to visit grandaunt, granduncle, granny or grandfather. My question is, why can that not still happen? Because I believe that there's more than one way to imprison a person other than sending them to Her Majesty's Northwood or Her Majesty's Fairbanks. We can imprison our people by putting them in nursing homes and golden age homes, you see.
Or even within our own homes.
Say again?
Or even within our own homes.
Or even within our own homes, yes, absolutely. Because we can put cameras up, We can put cameras up to see if they're being treated correctly, if they're getting their meals on time, if any caregiver should be wayward. But cameras cannot save a person if there's a dire situation at hand. What I'm appealing, if the powers that be can allow family members to visit, if even once a week, visit our loved ones in nursing homes on Grand Cayman and on Cayman Brac, if we can go and visit, do the test before entering, because we don't want to be positive and carry it in. I'm asking the powers to be, the Minister of Health and Wellness, Honorable Sabrina Turner, and all the staff that can make these things happen, because it's sad when we have our loved ones, pun intended, just pining away in the Pines or at the Kakernel Community Care Center. They want to see us, interact with us. All right, I'm finished with that one.
Yes, sir.
I've shed light on it now, you see, and I know I have an opportunity to do that. The next point is community group homes. I'm very excited that my good friend who celebrated a birthday on National Heroes Day in Cayman, by the way, Jackie Neal, has successfully opened the Loud Silent Voices Community Group Home in West Bay. In my opinion, we need a community group home in every district across the Cayman Islands to assist those who would suffer from mental health issues, suffer from perhaps coming out of rehab but need a halfway house until they're fully ready to be re-emerge back into society.
Right.
Let me close by saying, Mr. Moderator, and I want you to get this and get it good. There are many people in other countries living in community group homes who desperately want to come home. Some will come home once we have the East End mental health facility built, but I'm here to tell you that there are going to be Caymanians who are going to die in other countries who will never come home. You see me? I'm a free spirit. I go and come as I please. I'm a tourist. I'm a student. I'm a broadcaster. I am an artist. I go and come. So I was never trapped. It's good to be home. God bless the Cayman Islands. I'm Quincy Brown. Good afternoon.
Hey, Quincy, thank you very much. And to his point, we can, sadly dismiss it because of when it's said and to whom it's said and even, who is saying it. But before we do, can we reflect on it? I mean, his 2 points. This notion of the desire in all walks of life, in every aspect of anything that we're doing, to make sure that we're always safe. Are we actually being wise, and that seemingly attempt to keep people safe, are we by some unfortunate endeavor causing more harm because of the disconnection. And then his notion of the group homes, well, there's something to be said for that. Let's take this call. Welcome, good afternoon, thanks for calling.
Dean, is it my turn?
I believe it is. It is. How are you?
Good evening to you. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing with us.
I want to express myself on, I had a hospitalization last weekend.
Okay.
And the experience up there was terrible. I think the public need to know about this. I reached out to Rena Turner, left several messages. Up until now, I haven't got a response from her. But I reached out to her MLAs from West Bay, as I am from West Bay. And I must say I got a response, and thank God it was positive. But I want to say what happened to me at the hospital. I was admitted on Sunday to the hospital. I didn't go upstairs until, I think it was 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I was down in emergency all that time I went there between 6 and 7. Dwayne, I want to say, first I was told, I asked for a blanket because I was cold. Dwayne, I was sad to see what I was offered.
Okay.
Those blankets has been there, safe to safe, from 8 to 7. I started having children.
Wow.
So I don't need to say no more about the blanket.
Okay.
I was told I was told before I could get a pillow, one had to come available. They had to wait until a bed was free to get me a pillow. At 5 o'clock a.m. Monday morning, I asked for a cup of hot tea, and only to be told I couldn't get the hot tea because there were no cups available. I asked the male nurse, I said, are you serious? No cups available to give people hot drink. I find it so unacceptable. We are paying so much insurance. We're demanded to have medical insurance to get any medical assistance and to go to our hospital. I had to tell them, I said, when I talk to a member of staff that is administration, I won't call their names, I told them our hospital shouldn't be named Cayman Islands Hospital. It should be named Jamaica Hospital. Dwayne, never to mind, there was a 75-year-old woman shared the room with me. And I want to tell the public to hear how the doctor, you're not talking about no nurse there, you're talking about a doctor, spoke to that lady. I had to tell them, I said, let me tell you something. My mother's 81 years old, and if the doctor had spoken to her the way that one spoke to that lady, they would have to arrest me, I'm going to tell you. When I turned to on her, it was ridiculous. I told the supervisor I spoke with, the only thing that doctor needed to be a proper hug was to get on her hands. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
Anyway, just to inform the public out there, when they're going to the hospital, please take a pillow, a blanket, and if they want hot drink or the morning hours, as some of us wake up that time in the morning and get a glass of hot tea, please take a cup with you to make sure you can get hot tea. The male nurse came back 1 hour after, this was like 5. He came back on 6 and he said, I can give you hot tea now. I said, oh, thank you. I said, where did you get a cup to give me hot tea? He said, I went down to maternity ward and they gave me one styrofoam cup.
Wow.
However, I asked my sister when she was coming to please bring me a couple of styrofoam cups in case the patient next to me needed one. I could offer one. But Dwayne, it's ridiculous to know that we got a hospital up in the state. When I spoke with my MLAs, or my representatives, I can't call them MLAs no more, and told them the situation at the hospital, I said, I hear that we got surplus money in our budget. I think we need to go into that surplus and do better with our hospital. I wanted to be told there's no money in surplus. I reached out to the minister and left several messages, and up until now, I haven't got a call from her.
Let me ask if you don't, and this isn't just to elicit a response from you, but just generally speaking, in recent years we've heard similar things, and even in education, where allegedly teachers, parents, and the like were sharing that in the classroom, the teachers had to go as they normally do, but even more so now, dig into their own personal pockets, or tap their own personal resources to get toilet paper, to get their supplies for the classes. And then we're hearing what you just shared publicly, but we've heard it from others, that even within the hospital, there are certain times where things are not available. Can I ask, as respectfully as possible, do you think that this is happening, whether in education or in healthcare, just those two sectors alone, as they may be in other sectors, these things are occurring more frequently, but for some reason, maybe we're not aware of it, maybe we're embarrassed about it, but we're not sharing it publicly because we are ashamed, and because of what's happening? Do you think there's more frequent occurrences of these lack of resources or attention to these things than the public generally is aware of?
Well, Dwayne, I don't know exactly, but just let me put this out there. I was told by the male nurse the reason they didn't have supplies to give me was because of the holiday coming up. I said, the holiday, that should make it even more that you should stock up on what you need because it's a holiday.
Yeah, true. Make provision, right? Because you're coming.
Dwayne.
Yes, well.
Dwayne, our hospital, I told them, our hospital need to be restructured, and we need to do it now. Okay. It's not that our forefathers that worked so hard for our country to make those things possible. I mean, we don't get free medical.
Not at all. All right. Okay.
Bear in mind, there's nobody getting free medical no more. Our hospital is in a terrible state. Believe what I tell you. And I'm putting it out there for the public. And I hope somebody from government respond to it. Because it is sad.
Okay.
Well, I hope I don't have the experience to be hospitalized again up there. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry that that was your experience, and I pray that as you put it out there, that now it's addressed and we can have it fixed properly, because it's not what I think we want nor deserve nor expect. But thank you very much, and I pray you're feeling much better. All right.
Thank you. I am feeling a lot better, and the staff on the next day came in. They were very professional. I want to say out there that they treated the lady next to me a lot different, because that was terrible. I mean, 75 years old, and to have a doctor speak to her the way that one spoke, I reported her. I mean, I had no option but to report it, because, like I said, if my mother wasn't there and the doctor spoke, they would have arrested me.
I think we can relate.
Put me down in mental ward, because they would have thought I was crazy the way I would have went off on her.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the passion and the respect that we should have for our elderly. But thank you for that, Mom. Okay. And with great respect to the caller, but also to the tardiness and hitting the break, let's pause, do that, and when we come back, we'll join our callers. Stay tuned for Talk Today. Hey, good afternoon and welcome, Mike. And thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, taking some time out of your afternoon and, calling us and sharing. And we do have some callers online. Welcome, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Dwayne.
How are you today?
Not bad, and you, sir?
Oh, blessed. Very thankful indeed. Yes, indeed.
One of my friends used to say, my free brother used to say, wonderful, blessed, and highly flavored. But George, that was his topic.
That was his, yes.
Highly flavored.
I remember that, yeah.
We're calling about this morning. We had Honorable Ken Bryan on the air.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, he wasn't taking any calls. I wanted to give him an incident and then, a suggestion on it.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about the cruise line, so they're opening this, opening up, getting some kind of union set up, for the Water Sports Association, Water Sports and Taxis, I guess is what he was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Getting business from the cruise ship, how we should deal with the cruise ship, with the competitions and stuff. I wanted to tell him, I want to congratulate him because that was a very important topic, but so many other members of the government and previous governments had said that they were going to deal with that. I hope this is not just one of them that talk and say this is what he going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And because he got more than one issue on that level that he needs to look into. And I had experience with it. We need to look in where you got these staff that are coming off the cruise line, especially Carnival Cruise Line, especially, not all of them does it, but especially Carnival Cruise Line, makes their staff come shore and they actually work on our port. And I think, I don't know what kind of contract they got with Carnival, the government got negotiated with Carnival that allowed them to be able to perform work in this country and not have to get a trade work permit or a trading business license. Because, and I'm asking you, I'm telling you, I had the first experience with it. I was going on a tour. We was booking for Canadian Land and Sea. There was the Shorex came off the boat, got into my bus, and I gave them the tour, beautiful tour going all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
She was translating to her people some of French, and they said she had to do English and French.
Mm-hmm.
Only to be told that when she got to the dock where she was going to join the boat, I seen her getting out with all of this camera equipment and everything. And I said to her, I said, Mom, what are you going on the boat? She said, yes, Mom. She said she was told by Carnival Cruise Line that she could take the pictures of her guests and, like, the guests would be paying them then to take these pictures. And I said to her, I said, Mom, I'm very sorry, but it wouldn't happen here today. I don't know which other day you will do that, but not here. I said, you don't have a business license. I said, you have to get a business license or a work permit to work on my show. And I said, you got two choices. You either leave that camera in my car and you go on the boat and enjoy your day, because I pay a photographer on my boat. And I say, I am not allowing you now to go and take the business away from them, and then I got paid them too. And I say, you can do two choices. You can leave the camera in my car, and I'll be here when you get back, because I'm going to pick you guys back up, and I will assure you that your equipment will be very safe. Or I can drop you back to the cruise ship, because I say, you're not going on my boat, for And she said, okay, she's very sorry, but she said she was told by Carnival Cruise Line that she could take the pictures of the guests, that the guests didn't have to take it from us. I said, well, sorry, you might be employed by Carnival Cruise Line, but you're not employed by Grandy Golf. I said, I don't have no problem, and I'm getting around to you, because I never knew who I was, so I just called my name. And so we need the government to look into that. If we got that competition out there that is telling people that they can come shore and get work without and they go on tours and everything. So I know they wouldn't even allow to get a translator on shore. They come with their own translator, and I know they are paid. And a tourist told us that they are told that they pay them and do not pay the locals, because they are the ones that are paid to do the job. So government needs to look into that contract. Well, when he's looking at negotiation of the prices, he needs to look. They need to check in them contracts real deep.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is ridiculous for them to be able to come through. 'Cause I can't do it in their country. So I don't see why they should be allowed to come to mine because they're the cruise line and they want so much profit.
Well, I appreciate you sharing what you've experienced directly, and maybe it'll get people to thinking, huh?
Yeah.
All
So
right.
I hope I would try to get to Ken Ben this morning, but I didn't get him.
Well, this is where I think as a people we need to have a concerted voice so that people appreciate what is happening and maybe come to understand that it's not just them or not just in their particular area. So thank you very much for sharing that with us, okay?
You're welcome, Julie. Thank you.
All right. Let's take another call. Good afternoon. Thank you for calling.
Hi, good afternoon. Well, it's one thing we can all be thankful for today, and that's a nice cool breeze that we're not going to pay for.
Oh, my amen to that.
Anyway, I want to bring this to the Trade and Business License attention on the Liquor License Board, the chairman and the members.
Mm-hmm.
Friday night, I was by Price Right parking lot, and all of a sudden I heard this blasting on the other side, but then somebody behind, across from Price Right, and somebody behind where Liquor for Less is and Kirk Motors.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you, it frightened me when I heard it. I thought it was somebody preaching all kind of rubbish. And then when I know the bang bang music started and everything was full blast, and this man, he was saying this and saying that. And I had enough of it, and I called the police station, and I said, look, I think you need to send a police out here because the noise that's going on here is above the level that it should be as far as I'm concerned. And he said, well, and I said, you know what these people need to learn? That this is Cayman and this is not Jamaica. He said, well, it might be a function that's going on. I said, I don't think so, and regardless of whether it is or not. The noise is too much, and it's really ridiculous. I said one Sunday night I came out here to recycle some things, and it out there was crazy. I had to call the police that night, and at least they went, but I don't think they ever went Friday night. And I can tell you one thing. I live at least a half a mile away from where that was, and that was just as noisy in my area as what it was out there. It had my ears ringing for my was afterwards. And it's not only Friday night, they do it Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday till all like 2 and 3 o'clock next morning. And I would like to know what kind of license they have that they can blast their music so loud. And then they've been preaching on the radio for the last 2 weeks that the bar rooms must not play music on Sundays. That means that jukebox can't be played. Now, I would think that most of those jukeboxes, the sound would remain inside the bar and not outside the door. But then these people, they can go out there and own Cayman, look like they own Cayman, and then they can blast all over the island and nothing is said or done about it. They can continue to do what they want as they feel. No, that needs to be taken care of. So I'm asking the chairman and the members of the Liquor License Board and the Trade and Business License to look into all this ruction that be going on out there every weekend till all like 2 and 3 o'clock next morning. And it's blasting all over the place. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for that too. And maybe as the caller shares, other people would figure there's a way we can find a fair balance between, that level of enjoyment and what some may see as a public nuisance in many respects. All right, let's pause and take a short break, and welcome the calls right after. Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us. It is Open Line here on Talk Today as we go straight to the phones. Welcome, good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon once again. As my good friend Mrs. Georgette Ebanks would say, rarely do I call twice. How you doing?
Oh, what was it? They say the postman always rings twice, huh?
I can tell you what, I'm very grateful for Radio Cayman Talk Today, and I'm grateful for the good job that you're doing, Mr. Ebanks. It's Quincy Brown one more time, and good to spend time. It's good to be back in the Cayman Islands and good to spend time within our beautiful sister island. Yes?
True.
Now, we're understanding that Brack Power and Light Company could be in some serious trouble in terms of running out of fuel because there's an oil ship that can't dock because of bad weather, and it's also rumored, it is alleged that the captain and perhaps some crew members might be infected with COVID. So there are some issues why that fuel tanker can't get in, and we don't want to run out of fuel, obviously. Little Cayman's power plants seem to be in a bit more of a better position of not running out as soon as perhaps Kim and Brack could. So we're hoping that we can get fuel into Brack Power and Light. I'm sure the professional staff and shakers and movers of the company, they have plans in place to make sure that we're all okay as consumers. I also want to talk about, Mr. Ebanks, customer service. It's at an all-time low all over the world because people are stressed, whether they're in restaurants or whether they're in resorts or at hospitals. Customer service is at an all-time low. And let me tell you something, as somebody who's trained in customer service, it's an act one has to put on. On your worst of days, you still have to put on that smile and your demeanor and your mannerisms. You have to be welcoming. And my experience at HSA Grand Cayman Georgetown Hospital on December 17th, 2021 was not good. It was not good. Because I have my 2 vaccines and have recently been boosted, but I still got a touch of the, well, somebody said to me, Quincy, don't say you got a touch, you either got it or you didn't get it. So at the at-home test in Prospect, I tested positive. So when I was taken to Georgetown Hospital on December 17th, I was not welcome. I go home. Why are you here? You're spreading it. Go home. When in fact, they should have tested me at the hospital to determine whether it was COVID-19 or Omicron, the new variant. I was not impressed with the customer service at the flu clinic. Neither was I impressed with the customer service in the accident and emergency. The 2 women were very hostile, grumpy, and I felt as if I was discriminated against. Why? Because I'm a recovering alcoholic? Because I'm a recovering this, recovering that? It was not good. And I usually have very good things to say about the HSA. So that was not good. I spent time in East End at the quarantine facility thanks to Isaac Rankin, MP for East End. He provided food and so many other people, not himself personally because he had it too, so it had to be dropped off. But customer service at the HSA, it needs to improve. I know our doctors, our nurses, the staffers are overworked. They are tired. It's a thankless profession, but you're in customer service. Get it right or get out. I'll close by saying that there's a letter I penned to the Premier of the Cayman Islands. It's a very short letter, which I'd like to read, because I'm spending time in the sister island, but I'll be back to Grand Cayman at some point. The letter reads, 24th of January, 2022, a letter of proposal to Premier Wayne Panton on National Heroes Day. Dear Premier Panton, Happy Heroes Day. Congratulations on today's auspicious ceremony held in Georgetown. I listened on Radio Cayman. I pinned this letter today as I am seeking funding and approval from the PACT administration on several Brack community projects. I am still a displaced tourism ambassador who continues to be very grateful to receive the monthly tourism stipend. Now, here on the Brack, as I walk around, I see where there's a need for a community development assistant, laborer, and drama tutor, as I have identified several Brack projects of which I'm willing to undertake. We need to revitalize the West End Community Park. We need a wall at the Christopher Columbus Garden with the names of all the Cayman Islands national heroes, as we have on Grand Cayman. I'm willing to work along with Simone Scott and Nelda Sophia Hunter to strengthen YMCA and the Alex Panton Foundation here on the Brack. And also, I'm willing to work with Kathleen Bodden-Harris to encourage and support more recycling programs on the Brack, and I'm willing to work at the Heritage House. I'm also including Minister Bernie Bush Minister Kenneth Bryan in this email, because if we're going to talk about tourism and culture, sustainable development, and our environment, we need to come together. And I'll close by saying that the job that was offered to me at Kim Brack's Faith Hospital by Dr. Velosamy as a customer service greeter, I'm still waiting to hear back from Dr. Velosamy, or was it a ploy? Obviously, I'm deviating from the letter now. I'm talking back to you. Was it a ploy to get me out of Kim Brack on June 30th against my will, of which they did? They all colluded together. So if Dr. Velosamy is serious about that position at Kim Brack's Faith Hospital, of which he offered me once I returned, I'm back in the Brack, and I understand you arrived back on the 20th of January, Dr. Velosamy. Thank you for taking my call, and I'll just saying we need to look about our elderly in the nursing homes, because having locked away, not being able to see family members, it's not good for their mental health. I'm Quincy Brown. Thanks for accommodating me, sir.
As usual, Quincy, thank you very much. And any news now? And when we come back, more open line. Who's going to call and share a thought? Well, stay tuned. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. It is open line here on Talk Today as we invite you to share a thought with us. You imagine it's the end of the first month of this year as the calendar that we know, and yet it's the first day of the week, as some of us will subscribe. Now, there's even that controversy as to what is the first day. I think what's important is that we are part of the day, and are we prepared to do all that we can to make it a better day, not just for us, but for each other, for our children, and for our future. Our future as we age, God's willing, but their future and their children's future. Now, for some of us, we are so self-absorbed, self-serving, and selfish that we can't see any sense of anything. And then for some of us, we're so giving, loving, kind, considerate that we never even think of ourselves. Well, two ends of a spectrum, perhaps. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, or WhatsApp 925-3261, and share with us. The last caller's point, though, in respect to maybe, power supply within the country. Question that was asked via one of our electronic outlets: should the country as a whole, maybe starting with Cayman and Little Cayman, invest more heavily in alternative energy, solar in particular, and somehow, going back to our discussion about privatization and eminent domain and expropriation and nationalization and should we step in and purchase Cayman Electric Power, maybe outright or as a joint venture, and fund it so that it becomes what it is, a very viable entity, one that the country as a whole has a vested interest in. We, as the message reads, we start to deploy a solar array and fund as much as possible so that 100% of the homes and businesses can get almost 100% of its energy needs, by renewable sources. Now, what do you think about that? It probably wouldn't be a bad idea. I can harken back to the early 90s when, at that time, the World Travel and Tourism Council were talking about doing things that are just now starting to gain traction. And there was a discussion with the then, Minister of Tourism discussing, talking and considering, Little Cayman and Cayman in particular could be an example where the developments there are things now that we're talking about, LEED certification and the idea of having it sustainable. We use a lot of words sometimes. We're a little bit ahead of our times. Sometimes it's the wrong person saying the right thing at the wrong time to the wrong people. But is it too late? Well, some would say so. Some would say never too late. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for calling.
Hey, good afternoon, Sterling Dwayne. How are you doing on this last day of January?
Can you imagine the last day of the month but the first day of the week?
Hey, I tell you.
Yeah, my blessings to you too, man. So how's your day?
Your comment there with the Bracken Power Light.
Mm-hmm.
I've been told that they have 14 days, well, that was a couple of days ago, left of fuel. What you have to look at is it doesn't matter who owns the company, because if government owns it, and the ship can't dock, is the same scenario right over again. So that part of it, it really don't matter who owns it.
Right, but the idea is that we don't necessarily, from the comment, hopefully I was clear, the comment was sharing, not rely on fossil fuel, but maybe start to invest in renewable energies like solar and the like, so that we don't have to be so dependent on the ship being able to come in.
Again, that is good, but for the last couple of days too was overcasted, so you wouldn't get the full potential of those solar arrays.
But you still get some benefit.
You get some, but I mean, if you're depending on one type of energy, whether it's solar or wind or whatever else, and you don't have it, you just don't have it.
Well, which is true, but interestingly,
so is the C with the fuel, the diesel.
Right, but interestingly, right, and I'm beginning to not just defer to these people, but to actually be persuaded. I don't know about you or others, but there are a few of us that were on the impression that if it's an overcast day, the solar panels don't generate any energy, and apparently that's not true.
That's not true. It does provide some, but it's not as much.
And the thing is, right, we have allowed so much to influence us that is not only inaccurate and deliberately presented as such, but we don't question anything anymore. We don't ask questions. We don't seek clarification. We trust, but we don't verify. And
that's correct. I know. Many years ago, and this is many years ago. I voiced it on Radio Cayman's talk show. I don't remember who the host was at that time. I think it might have been Austin. At CUC. They were on the show, and I asked them about the solar.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't interested
Mm-hmm.
because X, Y, and Z, how horse, fat, and cow did.
Mm-hmm.
But now, it's a different story. Now they're telling people, oh, go to renewable energies.
Mm.
So, you know, I mean...
Well, just for clarity, I mean, if it was Austin, then that would have been one of the private stations. He was someone, excellent facilitator.
I think he may have been on Radio Cayman at one point.
But not as a host, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, I don't remember.
Well,
I don't know who the host.
I don't usually be indignant and adamant, but in this case, I can be. Yeah, he served many roles in many ways. And, but to your point, though, I mean, the substantive point, is it that we should wait for a private sector entity to dictate and decide? Should we wait for a government, whether appointed or elected? I mean, where is the populace? Take, for instance, immediately after Hurricane Ivan, how many of us in our neighborhoods, in our immediate neighborhood with our families, got out as soon as it was safe to do so and assess what was happening and try to make sure there were no down power lines, there weren't any trees, any people who were in peril? We just sit down and wait for some government-appointed person or elected person to just say, well, okay, now we can do this. We had a good council of our parents and grandparents who benefit from the expertise and experiences that they had, and the council of their parents and grandparents. So why is it that we sit down with on our hands and our thumbs and our ears and eyes and seemingly no sense at all?
Well, at that time of Ivan, I had two hats on at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was working with government in the planning department at that time. And I know electricity inside now because I born and grew into it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So therefore, it was my first instinct to go and see, what's around that is, or to make whatever's around safe.
Safe, yeah.
And then I had the duty then to go out and also make it safe because of where I worked.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I was one of those that, whether you say fortunately or unfortunately, went out. I did it.
Yeah, and I commend you for it. And many of us did it in a safe, sensible way to try to be of some service to society without asking or waiting or expecting anything, right? Yeah. But here we are now, and what is probably worse than our unwillingness, sometimes fear to do something, is when those who may have the wherewithal, the experience, the expertise to go and do something, we're castigated and chastised for stepping up. Whereas in the past, you were not just invited to volunteer, right? And you were sought out. I have to seriously wonder, man, what's going on with people?
Yeah, but on the other hand, what could be done you got a USF crisis coming up on your hand now if the ship don't get to dock. What can be done from here on is for either the private sector to look into it or to government to do a bulk storage area to have reserves.
Right. And that might be,
for a month or two.
That might be good, and it might be a solution that may work well for 50 years or 100 years, but is it sustainable? Is it long-term enough? And to your point, should we just...
Right here in Cayman after Ivan, Sterling, the government did put down a few of those storage areas,
Right. But is that the best option? And I want to ask that, not because I have any horse in this race other than wanting to see a healthier country and society and the economy and people. But is it the best option? I mean, should we, as the message off here,
it would be the best option.
Better than solar or some other thing renewable?
Yeah,
better.
let me go on to see why it is the best option.
Of course.
We're in a hurricane region.
Mm-hmm.
And believe you me, none of the solar panels are going to hold up. Not even a windmill will hold up in 150, 200 miles an hour wind or gust higher. It's not going to happen.
So windmill aside,
if we depend on the alternative energy,
Mm-hmm.
you would say for 70-90% of our electricity, we are doomed.
Why?
Let me put it that way. We are doomed if you get one major storm like Ivan again.
So are we saying then by default that huge bulk storage facility will survive and withstand hurricane force winds, 150 to 200 miles an hour?
Yes. Yes.
And the possible environmental consequence of a leak, or what we saw a few years ago with the threatened fires at the South Sound terminal, that aside, is enough to let us even ignore the possibility of exploring solar array?
I'm not saying not to explore it, but I'm saying that we just can't take and say, well, we're going to do 70 to 90% of alternative energy.
Yeah, boy,
leave the fossil fuel, you would say, energy behind, because when that time comes, if it comes, that you get that hurricane that blow those, you don't have no energy.
Yeah. Well, Malmo, Sweden, was it Seville in Spain, even spaces in Germany would say otherwise. But to your earlier comment regarding the private sector, would we say then we should leave it to some private sector entity, whether that's a corporate entity or an individual, to step in and say purchase, not to set up a competing entity, but say purchase, Brack Power and Light, for instance? Or should that be something that the country owns either through government or through some infrastructure fund where we all can purchase into it? Should we be like how we are allegedly on Grand Cayman or in other jurisdictions?
No, and no.
Okay.
I would never, ever recommend that Brack Power and Light be sold to one entity other than government.
So what's going to stop?
Never.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think this is a time where we should have some very, very honest, open public discussions on the way forward for a country. We see infrastructure, we see essential services, we see employment, we see the economy, we see housing, land ownership. But are we seeing the need for public and frank discussion?
We should have open discussions.
Right. Well, let's see how many of us can take a look for what we said today.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, man. All right.
All right.
Talk to you soon. That final break to take, and it's only Monday. Well, let's see what transpires. Stay tuned. We'll talk today. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. And thanks so much for joining us today as we go right back to our phones. Welcome. Good afternoon. Thanks for calling.
Yes, good afternoon. How are you doing?
Excellent and blessed. How about you?
Trying to be.
All right. Well, together we shall.
Okay. The discussion on the topic and up on the table for discussion is whether or not Cayman back light and power should be bought out.
Well, we can talk about that. Yeah, let's ask that question. Let's answer it.
I don't know if it's wise though to be contemplating buying a generating plant that's generated by fossil fuel when fossil fuel is becoming something that is going obsolete.
But the caller
it's running out,
mm-hmm.
and also technology is becoming so advanced that
mm-hmm.
Battery pack can be used now to go in vehicles for 1 million miles, and that power, I believe,
mm-hmm.
will be able to use in homes and the likes, where fossil fuel will be far less useful for consumption.
And we're dependent on man with fossil fuel as opposed to God's hand via the sun.
I don't know how fast it's going to happen, and I think how fast it's going to happen is going to dictate whether or not it makes sense to
mm-hmm.
even think about the purchase. But my reason for calling, though, is
mm-hmm.
this morning on the brother discussion,
mm-hmm.
The hazard management was on.
Right.
And
right.
They discussed the earthquake that took place, 2-3 years ago?
January, was it 20th in 2020? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some time ago. And
mm-hmm.
they hit all the topic, but I had from the time the earthquake took place, I had some concern with those sinkholes that emerged all over the island.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if some mapping of those sinkholes was done,
mm-hmm.
and some investigation done on them, even preliminary investigation in terms of
are we still monitoring them? Right.
The location, the
mm-hmm.
depth of them, and anything else that they can reveal to us. Because I mean, if these sinkholes are showing up all over the place, is it that something is happening geologically that we need to be aware of?
Mm-hmm.
And what would happen if another earthquake takes place? Is that going to be a fault line cracking and opening up, something to that effect? I mean, speculation, but in absence of anything else, I guess we speculate.
Right. And to your point, are we still monitoring those and assessing? Are we concerned? I mean, other than you, how many of us are asking the questions? Think of just right here in the vicinity of the government admin building. We
mm-hmm.
exit, and as we drive out, the left lane, as it were, we still see the remnants of what was a small sinkhole that has now been, patched over.
Mm-hmm.
The commercial developments in the surrounding area, the people that work in those areas will tell you that there was an issue there. And then likewise with many of the residential and beachfront properties. So are we, as you shared, are we paying attention to it? Is there a probability of something, transpiring should this thing happen again?
Yeah, and that is that. I mean, if I've had the opportunity to work around explosives,
mm-hmm.
and even in the quarries and stuff, they drill holes every 10 feet. And that's how the explosive is able to break up the rock.
Mm-hmm.
By one explosive going off, and it impact the next one, impact the next. I mean, this sinkhole is a serious concern, and I think some more attention should be paid to them. And secondly, the traffic in Georgetown at the time of the earthquake, oh my God, it was
wow, yeah,
ridiculous.
Horrendous.
I mean, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I'm saying that it's a natural thing that everybody run out on the road. And then my understanding was that students were calling their parents to come and get them because they were so scared.
Mm-hmm.
And even though hazard management this morning mentioned it, that the schools have program and thing in place, with all due respect, the school, whatever the school have in place, cannot replace the comfort of a parent in such a time. And I mean, the parents are scared, the children are scared. They just want to be together, and parents are going to try and make their way to their children. Hence, something should be done to try and manage the traffic if such a thing were to happen again. I mean, Georgetown was actually locked down for hours.
You couldn't move.
Couldn't move.
Yeah. And there we are.
And my third thing I wanted to mention, because it didn't take any call, was let's assume, and I hope this never happens, let's assume that there was some after effect in terms of a tsunami. The Georgetown lockdown, everybody on the road. What would have happened to us? I mean, and shouldn't we designate certain buildings, like how we do in hurricane shelters, buildings that are built strong, such as parking lots and the like, as areas to, if something were to happen, to seek refuge in? I mean, these are some of the things that I was hoping. I mean, they hinted on them, but they never really nail it down to say that these buildings are building designated for such occasion. And I thought that that would have been a good thing to put in place.
Yeah. But take your last point. So let's say we do have buildings designated, or even if we don't, let's take what we think might be the human response. I'm not a scientist, geologist, or any kind of as they might put it, but a tsunami is imminent because of the aftershocks or what have you, right? This thing is so high, so far away, traveling at such a speed. Two things. One, what's the probability that we're going to get to that high point in sufficient time, given the speed, size, and height of this thing? Two, right? We get there. Others are clamoring to get there as well. What is our survival instinct? How does that kick in? And how many of us end up injuring, killing, harming, or maiming each other and trying to climb to the hill? Right.
All of that is going to happen. I mean, it's total chaos. I mean, but at the same time, the forward planning would help to eliminate that, because it's going to happen nevertheless. People are intelligent, and when this becomes visible, people are going to start running for high building. Some would think that this one is high enough, whereas it might not be, and we know what the consequences are, the possibilities are.
There it is.
And then you look for a higher one if time permits and everything else.
Right.
But having designated them, just as in the situation of a hurricane. I mean, in the hurricane situation, we have a little bit more time, I believe.
Right.
But having a designated building, whatever it is, and to say, well, after the warning, you have X amount of minutes, seconds to reach there, what have you. At least we know where to go. We head there, and hopefully we do it as orderly as possible. We know that in a crisis situation, that don't always play out, but at least we know where to head.
Right. I mean, it is something to consider. There are those who are quickly saying, but wait a minute, a private sector, I own this building. Even if it's a government building, they might be more concerned, even at that point, liability issues, protecting the data.
Well, whatever issues needs to be worked out, we have to work out, because at the end of the day, a liability is just that. I mean, it don't necessarily mean that it would come through, but at least we are attempting to save lives. That's the bottom line, saving people's life. I mean, you see, I don't know. I was seriously concerned with how Georgetown was locked down, and at that particular time, the talk that a tsunami was of some sort, whether a small one, large one, or in between, was imminent. I mean, what would have happened in Georgetown? I mean, boy, the thought of it is just...
Here is something, though, that I appreciate your first comment that we should not be solely looking at fossil fuels, and in fact, we should get away from it. So, with that in mind, do we owe ourselves, and respectfully, the sacrifice and service of those who've gone before, to be better stewards for the future generations, and now looking at the way our activities impact, the environment, the planet, and consider, not using and abusing the resources in a manner in which we have to date, and perhaps employing, other alternative means for food generation, for energy, and the like. So is this something that as a people now we need to consciously sit and deliberately embark upon another course of action and stop being this self-serving entity that we've been to date?
Well, fossil fuel is going to be around for some time in my my estimation. However, one has to recognize the speed and pace of technology.
Right.
I mean, it is rapidly moving forward, and this is where my concern is. Do we want the state to be buying a fossil fuel because what we need to protect the environment, when at the end of the day we are left holding the bag of something that would be obsolete? Just for consideration.
Yeah, man.
I'm not suggesting in any way that the state shouldn't be involved, even public-private partnership in exploring alternative energies. But I don't know. It would be. I don't think it would be wise. A wise move for without doing the proper research and everything else for government to be buying something when we know that throughout the world we are driving away from fossil fuel.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, and I can see those of us with the entrepreneurial mind seeing opportunities. There are those of us who are so afraid of our shadows that we don't go out in the day. But thank you very much, man, for your thoughts, and hopefully you'll continue to share with us. All right.
No problem. Thank you.
Blessings to you. Well, let's take one final call. Welcome. Good afternoon. Thanks for calling. Hey, Ram. How was that, man?
Well, tomorrow morning, New Year's start. 40 months, New Year's start. You paid out. I don't know. But talking to this. Darling, you talking about the environment, right? The surrounding, right? That was clear. And last year, run that word. Right? The limit, you're over that. Keith, that move on. So then, early on, I had a barrister, that woman, right? That woman, the barrister was called, she had a problem with the juicer, whatever. Let's talk about that problem now. Do me money now. That's the one now. So then, differently, right? It's about appropriation. Inappropriate, right? Parallel. I hear about this new government, the partnership, right? Look, I hear after the lawyer man talking about he mentioned history. His last day, right? And Queen Elizabeth II acknowledged him, right? Look it up. Acknowledged him, right? You know what Nina, what the right hand man. What's Nina? It's right?
Okay.
You know, it goes, right? So the bottom, in this part of cultivate time in hemisphere starting is world now, right? This by time it changes and what's going on, right? The point of it starting for the cash flow, right? Our hemisphere for the cash flow, right? Send the doctors, some about money, Zimbabwe, yeah, the doctors did Africa. That's okay. Nice it up. But I know that on this way. You have some tourism. So in the bottom in this life, right now, right? Tomorrow morning when you start. Thank God.
Okay.
I started 40 months of it, but so the point of it now, in this life, right? It's a mirror line, parallel, everything, So the one became man full blood or whatever, who won't stay here, being xenophobic or whatever. You understand the point I make? There's a problem. You understand something? My conclusion? And you know me better person, right?
Right.
Like I said, the whole nation desire parallel, partnership, right? What going on there? The part of the hemisphere with Ukraine and Russia. They got KGB, yeah, and I think one fight with who's one. So I know that.
Yeah, man.
Show today, but the point I make now, resilience, climate change, you know what that. That's prepare for hurricane.
Yep. Yeah.
So now, man, go to them. I'll go for 5 there. That's it, I go. Easy for the monitoring.
Yeah, man.
Better. So.
More time. The caller's points, perhaps planning and preparation, the idea that we be proactive. But as a people, are we prepared to set forth not just policies, but take action so that we not only benefiting ourselves now, we're preparing for future generations. Our forefathers used to talk about making provision. Probably today we talk about future proofing. Maybe it's one and the same. The chances are that we are spending more time talking, little time, doing. And when we do, are we doing it for the greater good? And is that greater good because loud, voice is sort of dictating the agenda, not necessarily being respectful of the individual? To what extent there is courage, or is there more cowardice? We have to probably reflect on, what was once described as Anglican as the wilderness of mirrors. Are we looking at things and seeing it for what it is, or are we prepared to accept that good is bad and bad is good and the like? Or do we stand and be counted, prepared to work tirelessly, without expectation of any sort of public acknowledgement, because it is our endeavor to do the very best for each other? Or are we only, again, looking at our own personal legacy and accomplishment, and as long as we come out looking good, not because we are good, but because we were able to misconstrue actions and somehow fool people? But what was it that the caller referenced Bob Marley, who also reminds us that you can fool some of the people some of the time. Well, maybe it is not just his lyrics that are reflective of the scripture, and maybe it is a need to inculcate within us that ethos, that integrity, honesty, a sense of ethics, a sense of being a servant leader. Should be the thing that embodies all of our actions. We only better because of the people around us who are prepared to hold us accountable as they raise the bar for themselves and for each other. Want you to be a part of a discussion tomorrow right after the midday news and midday meditation. A few things at the start of the day. We're looking forward to a discussion that should have unfolded today, but because of schedules being what they are, and because of the need to be understanding and accommodating, we should learn how to work with each other to improve the lot of all of us. I would not like anything better than to be able to sit across the table and break bread with someone who genuinely wants to move us forward. To celebrate in silence sometimes may be necessary to preserve the integrity of what transpired, because it protects others. But isn't it better to celebrate together so that we all can enjoy the victory? If our team wins the World Cup, the party that ensues after, that ensures all fans are able to enjoy the game, is one that is much more enjoyed than that person who locked in his vault, pouring that 47 glass of that special vintage that's been reserved. Wouldn't be as good unless there's somebody to share that glass with. Until tomorrow, my friends, be blessed.